The Boomerang ride concept originated around 1937. The first examples of the ride were sold by Harry Witt, based out of New York, and were marketed under both the names Waltzer and Boomerang, though the name Boomerang would stick, and by the 40s the ride would be commonly referred to by this name. Harry Witt would produce the rides under the company name Boomerang Manufacturing Corporation. As far as I can tell, this is the only ride that the company ever produced. The ride itself was intended as a new type of thrill ride that combined some of the features of many popular rides of the time into one. The ride consisted of a flat loading area with between 4 and 8 round, cuddle-up-like ride vehicles. Below the rider vehicle was a set of caster wheels placed around a wide base underneath the riders, making the cars very stable. Each car also featured a section at its base that could be hooked onto by the ride's main element. This main element was a spinning set of sweeps mounted in the middle of a disc-shaped flat track. This disc of sweeps could be spun without rider vehicles attached to allow for easy ride setup, and could also be spun at fairly high speeds with rider vehicles attached, creating large amounts of centrifugal force. Somewhere on the outside of this disc was a track that could feature inclines as well as twists and turns and covered sections. This track led back to the ride station and featured a set of lifting-style friction brakes that would be activated by a brakeman stopping the cars at the end of the run. The ride experience began with operators loading each car and taking them to the disc to attach them. They connected using a quick connect hook that used gravity to remain in the down and locked position. After all cars were connected, the disc would spin at a high rate of speed. After some time, the operator would manually release the cars one by one. This was accomplished by the use of a solenoid connected to a metal plate that was permanently mounted to the exact point on the ride to allow for the car to take the correct path down the track. Operators would have full manual control of this feature as well as of the speed of the ride and the ride's braking. They would need to balance the ride by releasing opposite cars, and they would need to space them out to prevent collisions. The ride would end with the cars bouncing around a custom track for each installation, usually partially enclosed by a tunnel. This would conclude with them being stopped by the friction brake near the station area. Due to the placement of the release mechanism, it was not possible for cars to be released on a path that would cause them to collide with an improper part of the ride. The Boomerang was a very unique ride for the time, and it remains a novel concept today, attempting to combine the concept of a spinning flat ride with the movements of a roller coaster. The ride could also be transported on just 2 semi-trailers. This made the ride quite the hit when it first debuted in 1937, especially with larger shows and parks. The ride's popularity peaked in those early years, with some major parks such as Chicago's Riverview Park installing one. These early rides were also offered with larger rider vehicles that allowed for a higher capacity. This could reportedly result in up to 15,000 riders per day, which is comparable with many large roller coasters. The ride was even set up at the 1939 New York World's Fair. It's from this fair's records that we can see the first signs of trouble with this ride model, as its revenue from the event was nearly half of the nearly 2-decade-older Whip that was also at the event. The next decade would see a decline in the entire amusement industry that would kill Boomerang Manufacturing Corporation, though the ride itself would continue to operate at several parks and with several showmen. The ride's concept would be slowly forgotten as parks and shows moved on to other ride types. In the early 1980s, Wisdom Rides gained an interest in the ride's concept. They would end up creating a more modern version of the ride, still using the same concept. Their ride would be designed exclusively for the traveling market and would feature a roof over the entire ride layout. The ride also used some type of new ride vehicle that's very different from any other rides they ever produced. The first and possibly only example was sold to Johnson's Amusement Carnival of Fun and would be leased by Straight Shows for a few years, with the ride making its debut in 1985. Sadly and surprisingly, less is known about the newer version of the ride than the much older Harry Witt version. No footage of the ride in operation is known to exist, and it's not known what happened to the ride. By the mid-1990s, the ride seems to have disappeared and was no longer offered by Wisdom. It's not clear how many examples of this ride were ever built. A few Harry Witt-designed versions of the ride remained in operation into the 1980s, such as the example at the defunct Bertrand Island Park in New Jersey, which closed with the park in 1983, likely closing as the only remaining installation of the original ride concept. The ride as a concept has now been completely defunct for around 30 years, with no new concepts for a return in sight. That being said, one has to wonder if a ride like this could be built today, likely with new engineering to make the concept safer and possibly higher capacity. Whether this ever happens remains to be seen. For now, the Boomerang is remembered as a very intense and classic ride for those that got to experience one. If you got the chance to ride one of these attractions, be sure to leave your experience in the comments. As always, if something in this video is incorrect, or if you have more information to add, please feel free to leave a comment. If you'd like to watch all remaining episodes of Flat Ride Friday Season 3 without having to wait, you can become a channel member and start enjoying them all right now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.